Hey folks, I'm Pastor Eric Tritten from Gloria Dei Lutheran Church in Hudson, Ohio, where it is starting to look a lot like winter out there and feel a lot like it too. And this is a weekly word where we are talking about beauty. And beauty it's part of God's design for life in this world. Beauty is an invitation to explore God's creative glory, His gracious redemption, and His gift of hope in a fallen world. Beauty opens us up to experience those things. Previously, we talked about the goodness of God's creation and how that stands against our experience of a world that is subjected to the curse of decay, and that decay comes into the world because of our sin. And as we experience that decay, suffering is a regular part of the human experience. Yet, it's also in suffering that we experience another view of God's beauty. And we might call this, as Dr. Schmidt, David Schmidt from Concordia Seminary calls it, broken beauty. And this is what he says. Created beauty is the beauty that God gives us to see. This is the first article, beauty. Woven through creation. Broken beauty is the beauty that God knows we cannot see. This is second article, beauty. Woven through the experiences of salvation. Broken beauty is centered in the cross, where love and evil meet to change the world. In His death and resurrection, Jesus has changed things, renaming and reclaiming all evil in this fallen world. So by God's grace, there is beauty in brokenness. Think of some of the oldest Christian art that you can come up with. There are glorious paintings of ghastly crucifixions. There are beautiful pictures of beastly beheadings. And the stories of saints and martyrs, they deeply move us. You know, one of the saddest things to experience is the death of a loved one. And that's a normal part of the experience of life in this world. And every year we have this day when we remember those who have gone before us in the faith. We call it All Saints' Day. And one of the hymns that we sing is called For All the Saints. And honestly, I can hardly sing it. I get so emotional thinking about people that have died and gone ahead of me and that I miss. But listen to these words. For all the saints who from their labors rest, who thee by faith before the world confessed, thy name, O Jesus, be forever blessed. Alleluia, alleluia. It's beautiful. And it's a beautiful expression of faith in the midst of this broken world. It's a beauty in the midst of the brokenness. Humiliation, suffering, sorrow, death. These are the troubles of this world. And they are the tools that Jesus took hold of in order to save us. He humbled Himself in His incarnation, God becoming man. His life and His ministry, he took the low place. He didn't come as a king. He came as a carpenter. And He even died a humiliating death. You know, we sanitize our images of crucifixion these days, but people knew in the early days of the church what went on with crucifixion. And they knew that crucifixion was the death of a criminal, and that the victim was naked, stripped of any semblance of dignity. And Jesus underwent that for you and for me. And yet it's in those things that we experience hope. Because the eyes of faith see there at the cross the love of God being enacted for us. His mighty and outstretched hands to save are at work there. And his faithful determination to reclaim us as his own are visible, again, to the eyes of faith, in the death of Jesus. Our experience of the horror of evil and suffering in this life is in tension with the hidden love of God, leading us to trust in suffering love. And I want us to understand this idea of suffering love in two ways. On the one hand, we want to talk about Jesus' suffering, revealing and expressing God's love for us. It's there in his suffering that we really know God's love. And if you ever doubt that God loves you, all you have to do is look at the cross and see what Jesus was willing to do in order to redeem and reclaim you, to know his love in your life. But we also want to think about suffering love in our own experience. We can think of suffering love as the lovingly way that we suffer the evils of this world, the indignities of this life as we await our salvation, holding on to Christ's promises by faith. We make two critical mistakes when we, on the one hand, explain away the suffering in this world as either deserved or just part of God's plan. And so you just kind of, or on the other hand, we ignore the real and apparent suffering of life without pointing the sufferer to God's love and mercy in the middle of their sorrows. I think of a young woman that I knew. We'll call her Sally. And Sally was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that cancer tore her apart. Sally lost her hair. She lost her breasts. She was sick from chemo and radiation. She could hardly function. She couldn't support her husband. Her children had to work to take care of her. And those are not small losses when you think about it. Each of those losses, they struck at her identity as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, and in some ways, even her own personhood. And I talked with her about that experience. And this is what she said to me. She said, "I thank God that he allowed me to have breast cancer." And I thought, that's a strange response. I would not have thought about it in that way. I was a little bit shocked, and I asked her, "What do you mean by that?" And she said, "I thought that I trusted God before I had cancer. I thought that I believed his promises. I didn't know what it was to trust him until I had nothing else, no one else to trust in." That's broken beauty. The love of God is real, even when it's hidden from our eyes and only seen by the eyes of faith. The evil and sufferings of this world are real too, but they don't negate the love of God. And where suffering and God's love meet, there is profound beauty in the brokenness, because we stand with Jesus and we experience his life in our dying. Now, this is not an easy topic, and I know that the question of suffering and the question of why bad things happen to good people and all of that has bothered people time out of memory. But I hope that what we've talked about here, this idea of broken beauty and God putting his love in the midst of these broken moments, especially the brokenness of the cross, I hope that's helpful to you. And if it was, please like this, share this with somebody else who would benefit from it. And next week, when I come back, I promise I'm going to talk about something a little bit more uplifting, and we'll finish this series on Holy Wonder with promised beauty. God bless you.